Good evening, Ms. Rojas. We are Nati Mackay, Jennifer Rivera, and Sara Solórzano from Contextos de los Sujetos Educativos T15. Our documentary is about sexual education and its importance. I hope you enjoyed it.
Sexuality is a word that implies a variety of aspects. When we talk about sexuality, we talk about human nature, raising awareness, talking and providing real information should be our goal, especially among the youth.
We must talk about the change that exists in human bodies at certain ages of human lives. Puberty is a hard time for everyone, and a lot of children can be even traumatized through the whole process, especially if they don't have their family support.
It is necessary to inform the general public about what sex education is, despite of beliefs and attitudes. Acknowledge people in sex education say sexuality is a topic that is discussed a lot, but little is acted upon. We need to change that.
In my opinion, sex education continues to be a taboo topic to discuss. It's really controversial for conservative people. Getting to know our bodies and sexual identity is something intimate. It is important to have the correct guide to prevent or try about sexual abuse, abundant pregnancy, and sexually transmitted infections.
Most of the parents are passive spectators. They usually feel ashamed to bring up this topic with their children, and often they find out wrong information among their friends or on the internet.
Sex education is a very important issue both in the educational and family context. Por no más abuso is the name of the campaign that is promoted through the internet in Ecuador in order to provide sexual education to young people and reduce the high rates of male domination in society.
As a result of the sex education studies, it's established that in several aspects there is insufficient information about it. The result obtained on sexual education seems to be mostly references in reference to the sexual act.
I believe that sexual education should be mandatory because it is really important, especially for avoiding early pregnancy. A lot of things that our children moms have never heard about it in their life, or if they did, they weren't really aware of the consequences of sex without protection.
Ecuador and other Latin American countries show a high rate of unwanted pregnancies, patriarchy, physical and psychological violence. Most of these cases occur in the family environment or are committed by someone who is close to the family.
Talking about it is not something that should be represented or that should not be talked about. It is elders' duty to break this taboo, to create a generation that is conscious and responsible of their sexuality because it's something that is socially taught and talked about constantly.
There is clear evidence that society is lacking in all of aspects, but especially in the emotional one. There are a lot of people that are oblivious and still against sexual education. Parents that believe that the government and school are trying to corrupt their children's minds.
This campaign consists of making the younger public aware of violating women, not treating them as an object or piece of meat as the pornographic industry makes them appear. At the same time, emphasizing the reflection of the communication of parents and children, contraceptive methods, and a sexual guide for young people.
Students know vaguely about it, but for example, there is no proper knowledge in sexually transmitted infection. The vast majority was ignoring about contraceptive methods.
Preventing STI is a must in health terms, and the educational community face this reality every year. Approximately 21% of all the new HIV diagnosed are among young people ages 13 to 24. Teens and young adults have the highest rate of sexuality transmitted disease (STD) of any age group. The birth rate for young women is declining but remaining higher than other industrialized countries.
The people who are against sexual education can clearly understand what's the real purpose behind teaching kids about their bodies and sexuality. Knowledge is power, and to be acknowledged, you need to be informed.
In- If the youth learn how to manage their own body and emotions, plus having all the information they need about sexuality, no matter their sexual orientation, they could be in advantage position in reference for those who don't know anything about it.
An ethical environment is a need to avoid all forms of persecution or discrimination towards people's sexuality, because otherwise it may translate into a serious abuse of the fundamental rights of children and adolescents with the consequent environment of the population health.
It is quite worrying that there is no accurate guide in the transition from childhood to adolescence. In this stage of life is when people start their sexual life, but they really don't know much about all the aspects included in a sexual encounter. In general terms, it represents a great risk for those involved.
Pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections are lurking around the corner. Information about sex education must be object effective without religious or political treatment.
It must include as much information as possible that guarantees sexual health for everyone. This will also facilitate people's free will and decision making.
Statistics around the world shows that by the time young people graduate from high school, 40% had had sex. 54% and sexually active students did not use protection the last time they had sex, and 19% drank alcohol or took drugs before.
Young people engage in sexual risk behavior that can have serious health consequences. Education, in general terms, is very important for the development of society because they are considered the basis for a successful future life. The same thing should be applied for sexual education.
In order to have a healthy, active sexual life in the future children and teens should be taught about the importance of teaching how their bodies work and the responsibilities that are implicit within any sexual act or engagement.